Welcome to A Moment of Zen. Time to sit back and relax as model, actress, mentor, and supermom Zen Sams takes you on a sexy and wild ride, covering the latest in film, fashion, pop culture, cryptocurrency, fintech, cannabis, and entertainment from the millennial mom's perspective. Here's your host, Zen Sams.
Hello, my beautiful friends and loyal listeners. It's always a pleasure to spend my time with you on the airwaves. Thank you so much for listening and interacting with me on social media. That truly does make it all worthwhile. Please make sure to follow me at Zen Sams. That's Zen with an X, not a Z. And remember that we're now live on Traverse TV Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern and on YouTube Sundays at 2 p.m. Eastern. All episodes of A Moment of Zen are also available on our YouTube channel. We have such a great show lined up for you today. In our influencer segment brought to us by Revere Securities, we are featuring Rachele Brooke Smith. She's an actress, a film producer, and a relationship expert, along with her husband, Emilio Palafox, a relationship coach, a domestic violence speaker, and co-founder of Relationship Renegades, a husband-wife combo. And they are certainly not your average relationship coaches. They are setting new baselines for what's possible in life and love. Today, we're chatting sex on the first date, millennials and Gen Zers in relationships, what is important, and how to keep it real and feisty. In another amazing My Digital World segment brought to us by Tempus Network, today we're featuring the incredible Carmelia Ray, a celebrity matchmaker and member of the Forbes Council and head of marketing at Kindly. They are a humanitarian-based cryptocurrency project launched in Web3. Today, we're chatting about bridging the gap between social impact and Web3 and how Web3 can allow for innovative consumer and business-related products that generate, execute, and track certifiable, measurable social impact on the blockchain. In our newest segment brought to us by Animoca Brands called Hello Open Metaverse. This week we are featuring Mohammed Ezeldin. Mo heads up the Tokenomics team at Animoca Brands, and they are a leader in digital entertainment, blockchain, and gamification, and they're working to advance digital property rights and contribute to the establishment of the open metaverse. Mo leads a global team that has driven dozens of projects for Animoca. He and his team's unique skill sets are driving decentralization through tokenomics, and they're building a sustainable token economy. Today, we're chatting about what it means to be the head of tokenomics, how to make a game sustainable, and how Animoca is shifting their approach to find the balance in gaming and GameFi. In our innovation and tech segment brought to us by Caldwell Soames, we are joined by our regular contributor, Paul Caldwell, and his friend, Dan Reichman, CTO of Original Digital Corporation. Today, we're discussing whether there is a paradox between bank tech and DeFi. The bigger question is, can we integrate both systems into our digital world and propel bank tech into Web 3.0 successfully? Stay tuned. We'll be right back with our influencer segment brought to us by Revere Securities. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeart Radio. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Revere Securities. Revere is committed to building a relationship of trust in which they work closely with you to help you define your objectives, explore alternatives, and choose the financial and investment strategies that are most appropriate for you. Go to reveresecurities.com.
Welcome back, my beautiful friends. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeart Radio. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Up in just a few minutes in our influencer segment brought to us by Revere Securities, we are featuring Rachele Brooke Smith. She's an actress, a film producer, an inspirational speaker, a wellness expert, and co-founder of Relationship Renegades. She is joined by Emilio Palafox. He's a wellness expert, an actor, a relationship coach, a domestic violence speaker, and co-founder of Relationship Renegades. You feeling the connection? A husband-wife beautiful combo. They are certainly not your average relationship coaches, setting new baselines for what's possible in life and love, rebelling against traditional relationship development mechanisms, and providing the missing piece of integration, identity transformation, and habit formation. Together, they're empowering humanity to co-create a world where healthy relationships are the new norm. I didn't even think that was at all possible. Today, we're chatting sex on the first date, millennials and Gen Zers in relationships, what is important, and how to keep it real and feisty. Is having sex on the first date a help or a hindrance when it comes to forming a relationship? It's a topic that's been much discussed, and opinions are constantly changing. There certainly used to be a stigma attached to a woman, in particular, sleeping with their date instantly, but these views seem outdated. So, what's the verdict? Some argue that it harms the chances of a proper relationship blossoming by putting out too soon. Others would suggest that sexual compatibility is a deal breaker to relationships, so it's important to find out early on if you're a match. Some people think there should be a 3-date rule for sleeping with someone. Well, who's to say? But here to chat some more are Rachel and Emilio, not your average relationship coaches and founders of Relationship Renegades. Welcome to the show, superstars.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much for having us, then.
Absolutely. Let's get to it. Rachel, I'm going to start with you. So, sex on the first date. What's the verdict?
Man, so first and foremost, I think there's not one answer for everyone because we're all so different. We're all so unique. I'm a big believer that pretty much society has this thing where they're like, there's one answer for everyone. And there's just not. We're all so different. Situations are so different. But speaking for me personally, on our first date, we did not sleep together because I had this feeling for me personally. It was this feeling of like, I wanted to so badly because I pretty much knew right away that this was the man I was going to marry. I even called my mom the next day saying, Mom, I met my future husband. But it was this feeling of like, I want to deeply get to know someone before I commit intimately like that because it does change things. And I feel like I'm so grateful that we did hold off a couple days before we slept together.
What?
I know, but it was
Emilio, what's your take? Okay, so you held off a couple days. What's your take on this? If you had to go give advice.
Yeah, I mean, totally. So, I do strongly recommend that you wait. I'm all about, and it can be fun, right? It's like a pleasure delayer kind of thing. It's fun to be a little pleasure delayer, and it creates a lot of intimacy. I think there is no right or wrong answer. I think a lot of people these days, because of society and societal norms, it's just kind of like casual, just like you sleep with each other. It's no big deal. And it's kind of a default right away. And so I think if people want to co-create the love and lifestyle they've always wanted, they have to do something different, hence renegades. They have to choose differently, act differently, go against the grain. And so I think with that, there's new possibilities and new things that is not just like the mundane, same repeating day that they've always experienced. So when you change things up, like life happens, love happens. And so also a lot of people these days, when they do choose, and let's say they do their default, like just sleeping with each other, because that's all their nervous system knows, they have a lot of guilt and shame around this. And that's the opposite of what we want, because guilt and shame just, send us in a downward spiral. We need to have loving kindness as we start to co-create the love and lifestyle we always wanted. That's very key. And so I think that's important to know.
Yeah. And that was my second question. If there was previously a stigma attached to having sex on the first date, do you think it has been lifted or still exists to some extent? But in general, I mean, I'll let you both answer that in your own way. But, when you're talking about sex on the first date, in my opinion, the answer lies solely within the individuals involved. And you can enjoy sex on the first meeting if you're open, comfortable, and a consenting party to it. However, if you're doubtful about the concept of sex so early on, or you're uncomfortable with the other person, there's no need to rush into anything sexually. My advice is always to go with the flow as long as it's within your personal boundaries. I don't believe in hard and fast rules about when the right time to engage in sex is, because everybody is different. So I agree with both of you. So let's go back to the stigma to having sex on the first date. Do you think it has been lifted, or do you still think it exists to some extent? Rachel, you could go first.
I definitely think it still exists to some extent, for sure. But I also feel like it's the circles which you run in. I feel like we're each individually creating our own reality, and we all live in our different bubbles. And so if you were to go to one, city or circle of friends, it'd be like, no, that's not a stigma at all. But to another in a different city or state or kind of bubble, if you will, it would be. But I think it's important, like he had talked about, our personal perception, our personal rules, that each and every person needs to set their own boundaries, like what they feel good about, what they feel like is good for them, and to know that we're constantly learning and growing in life, and to get rid of this guilt and shame thing, because that guilt and shame puts us in, like he said, that downward spiral. And what we're trying to do is be renegades and help the world understand that when we come from that place of judging ourselves, beating ourselves up, feeling bad about our decisions, we're just making it worse.
Just making it worse.
When we can come from this place of like, look, I'm human. I'm just here to learn and to grow and to experience. And I think the number one rule, like how you win the game of life, is that you just keep learning and growing. If you don't keep learning and growing, well, then there's something to talk about. But
Yes,
just always keep learning.
that's very
growing,
true.
and
Emilio.
changing and adapting.
Yeah, and for Emilio, it's encouraging to see the younger generations embracing their freedom of sexuality and sexual fulfillment in ways that are challenging these classic norms. That's not for everybody. But to Rachel's point, I think it's the circles that you frequent. So the question becomes, do you think sleeping with someone on the first date, Emilio, can harm the chances of a relationship developing?
I think, again, I think it really depends, like you said, on the individual. I can't, say that enough, because we're constantly co-creating our world, our realities. And so personally, I choose to say, it can harm, but you know what? I'm going to step back for a moment, because I think it just really depends. I mean, I think there is no right or wrong answer. Thinking makes it so. And so, you know what I mean? And so I think whether it's sex or whether it's whatever it is, it's always the right answer. Like, if someone gets triggered by something, by that sexual experience, then we believe that that's a gift, because it's going to lead something's resonating there that needs to be healed. And then, you go and find this book, find that person. It all happened because of this experience. So there is no right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
But I feel like, I don't want to think about it as like, will it harm it or not? I think if you're just coming from a loving place, no matter what decision you make, whether it's sex or another topic, if you're coming from love and getting into that state, and whatever comes from that, whatever decision that is, it's the right answer. And it's not about whether it caused pain or not, because people associate pain with the right or wrong decision. That's not the right answer. It's just, I think if you're coming from a loving place, whatever decision you make, know that you're on the right path because it came from love.
Yes. All right, good. So we have about 2 minutes left, and I want to get Rachel's thoughts in this. But a common misconception, Rachel, is that women in particular fear that men will think less of them for having sex on the first date. Is this true?
I feel like it's more about what you think about yourself. That's what's most important, because you're the only person that has to live with you 24/7, 365 for the rest of your life. And so I think making decisions more from a place of, how will this make me feel about me? And will I feel good tomorrow morning? And will I feel good looking at the mirror the next day? Is this going to boost my confidence or lessen my confidence? Is this going to make me have more self-love and feel whole inside? Or is this going to make me feel insecure and afraid and worried about what he thinks about me? So it's making decisions for you, not for anyone else.
I love it. Emilio, how important is sexual compatibility? You have about a minute. Is it important to establish sexual compatibility early on?
I'm going to say that chemistry lies, which is kind of a renegade thought. I think a lot of times just society and media are just focused only on that. And there's like a whole 360 approach. Like, I think finally I was so sick and tired of always choosing that. And it was like narrow focus. And I didn't think about the physical, the mental, the emotional, the energetics of it all, not just the chemistry. So I think it's important to really look at a broad spectrum, really 360. And I think pleasure delaying, like we were saying, and actually getting to know the person, if your goal is to find your love, your soulmate, if you will, then I think things do take time. Good things take time. And so I think if we're just focused on one thing and one thing only, it can skew things. Sometimes I think sex can develop differently for different people. And I think because if somebody has a trauma, has something, because we all have trauma, we've all gone through something. And if we don't fix that, then we don't feel safe in the bedroom. We don't feel safe in certain situations. So if someone makes a judgment call right away on sex, oh, it's over. That could have been someone that could have developed very beautifully. But if you didn't get a chance to create a safe space within each other, help each other grow, help each other remove those roots, then it could have been the best sexual experience of your life, but you didn't give it a chance. So of course, it's a deeper conversation, but I think like go 360, don't just focus on one thing, and make sure that you create a safe space, which is what we talk about, where they feel safe, seen, heard, and loved. And I think that is fertile soil for a great relationship.
Amen. And with that, we are out of time. I want to thank you both for coming on. You are amazing. Rachel, Emilio, what a beautiful couple. And more importantly, I love the concept of relationship renegades, and that you're out there triumphing through all of the stigma of relationships, don't last, or most marriages end up in divorce. But I love it that you're healing from within.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having us.
Guys, you have to check out Rachele Brooke Smith and Emilio Palafox. Check them out on the gram at Relationship Renegades, and definitely check them out at rachelbsmith.com. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeart Radio. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Revere Securities. Revere is committed to building a relationship of trust in which they work closely with you to help you define your objectives, explore alternatives, and choose the financial and investment strategies that are most appropriate for you. Go to reveresecurities.com.
Welcome back to A Moment of Zen, my beautiful friends. You're listening to the relationship experts right here, Emilio and Rachel, and we are talking about what are your thoughts on having sex on the first date, the difference between millennials and Gen Zers, and how to keep it feisty and fresh. All right, so we just came back. We were talking about a common misconception is that women in particular fear that men will think less of them having sex on the first date. Rachel so eloquently answered it. Of course, guys, in some cases, it's because of the previously mentioned unequal views society carries about men and women's sexual expression. And this is another reason why talking about sex before engaging in it is so important. And also to remember to approach sex in an empowering manner so that no matter what someone else thinks about you afterward, you still feel good about your decision to fulfill your sexual desires because it's your right to do so in a safe and consensual way without shame or guilt. That was the sum up of what our dear friend Rachele Brooke Smith just advised us on. Now, how important is sexual compatibility? We covered that with Emilio. Of course, that question is also individual, but it's extremely important. At the end of the day, sexual compatibility can definitely enhance the sexual experience within a romantic relationship, but it's only one component of sexual satisfaction. Other factors that contribute to great sexual interaction include physical, spiritual, mental, psychological, and emotional connections, which each includes subsets of even more facets. So it's very important to understand your emotional integrity at that point. And these can all be improved separately in various ways to increase pleasure and fulfillment between lovers. I know that at Relationship Renegades, that's what they do. Emilio and Rachel are really hands-on, and they set a great example. All right, now we're talking about how to keep it real and feisty. Millennials, born 1981 to 1996. Generation Z, 1997 to 2012. Those are important birth years, colloquially known as Zoomers, right? It's a demographic cohort succeeding millennials and preceding Generation Alpha. And researchers and popular media use the mid to late 1990s as starting birth years and the early 2010s as ending birth years. So most members of Gen Z are children of Gen X. Now, studies found Gen Z prioritizes financial independence. Gen Z also seeks career stability before marriage. And the average age Gen Z wants to get married is 27. Emilio, what are your thoughts on this? Is this very different from the millennials' focus?
So if Gen Z prioritizes financial independence, stability, getting married at 27, I think that's great. I think there needs to be a solid foundation for, building a skyscraper of your relationship, if you will. I've talked to various, millennials, and even though there is kind of like a theme with it, it's so different. And so I've heard various things, quite honestly, with millennials in our conversations on our radio show. But do you have a particular, maybe like top three that you just mentioned for Gen Z that we can go back to back on for them?
Well, I mean, look, financial stability is extreme. I'm a millennial, and financial stability has always been a top priority for me before even tying the knot. Rachel, what are your sentiments on that?
I think the biggest thing is I'm a millennial, and we got married when I was 34. So, and the biggest thing for me was, and one of the best pieces of advice that my mentor gave me, I was having all these problems in relationships, and I asked him, why do I keep ending up in these same situations where I'm trying so hard with these guys and it's just not working? And he was like, because you're not asking the right questions at the beginning of the relationship. And he was like, you need to go after and be with people who are being who they want to be in the world, how they want to be in the world. And if you're dating anyone before that, then you don't really know that person because they're not who they want to be yet. They're still on their grind. They're still on their hustle. And I think, so many of I mean, they've done so many studies, and one of the main problems in marriages is financial stuff. And so if you can both beforehand feel really good about your financial health and and have a good relationship communicating about finances and sharing finances and doing whatever that is, I think that cuts out one of the biggest problems in marriages. And so I think it's awesome. I think when I was 20 to 30, like, I didn't know who I was. I was still trying to figure it out. And I feel like it wasn't until I was about 30 years old that I really was like, I feel like I know who I am now. And then I could really be with someone else without trying to be who they wanted me to be, because I really knew who I wanted to be.
Totally. Yeah. I think that's important. And I think also, just to kind of talk about a little something extra to that, is a lot of people have their list of what they want in a person. It's very important to, of course, write that down and, of course, be able to find that. Well, first of all, become that, and then they will find that. But a lot of times people will right off the bat, like, and red flags are important. But a lot of times, like Rachel said, you know, if they know what they want, if they're present, they have a purpose, and they're going after it. A lot of times people are like, okay, they're not making 6 figures, they're not making 7 figures. But if the communication is there of like, look, these are my values, this is what's important to me, this is what life is asking of me right now, and having that safe communication, then we know so many great leaders that are now making 6, 7, more like 7 figures plus, but they started off like in a very chaotic situation, but they had that space where they felt safe, seen, heard, and loved with each other. And they were able to then become financially independent with both of them themselves. And I think sometimes people just right off the bat don't give anybody a chance. But if there's communication there, I think something can really blossom from there. So I think there's two sides of the coin.
And trust.
But
I think trust is a big thing. The trust has to be there.
Yeah, it's extremely important. Now, do you, both of you, I want both perspectives here, but when we look at the differences really between the Gen Z and millennials, and you talk about Gen Z prioritizing financial independence, so do millennials. Gen Z seeking career stability before marriage, so do millennials. The average Gen Z, right, we said wanted to get married at 27. The average millennial, that's about 32 to 34. So you're right on point when you got married. A lot has changed in the relationship structure, I think, in the last, I want to say, decade. Approaches are very different. Emilio, from your perspective, do you think that it is best to wait before having children and getting things in order between a couple? Or do you think the norm of how the baby boomers saw it still has precedence in American standards?
I think waiting is a very beautiful thing, just with anything, you know, taking some time to get to know yourself a whole lot better, the other person, the world around you. I think there's so many relationships. There's a quote that says the quality of your life is based on the quality of your relationships. And a lot of people don't prioritize that, especially with the relationship with themselves. You know, a lot of people are building real estate out there and building their external worlds, and they're not building their internal real estate. And so I think when you take the time to really find all the things that haven't been serving you, start to remove those. When you start to bring all the beautiful things a part of your life and surround yourself with those types of people, then there's a lot that can flourish within yourself and then your relationship, right? If I'm feeling really good about myself and everything that I'm doing and everything that I am, then I'm going to show up better in my relationship. So that goes physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially. And I think when you can wait and take the time to rep those, nurture those, water those, then a lot can blossom. Now, again, if something happens, because life happens, then there shouldn't, then that's okay. There shouldn't be any guilt or shame with anything. You have to, you know, roll with the punches. One thing that I'll end with is, a lot of times there's a quote out there that says, don't fight the river, be the river. And so a lot of times, you know, life happens and they're trying to like swim up shore and try to do something, and life's saying, no, go right. Like, you just had a baby, things are changing. Like, just flow with the river, right? There's a storm in Florida, right? Or, you know, the whole thing in Florida. Well, there's a lot of trees that break in those storms when life happens, if you will. And there's certain trees that just bend and don't break. So I think when you have that mentality, then you're able to kind of ebb and flow in life and just allow whatever happens to be okay, and to go with that river, rather than just trying to just do this one thing. It can create a lot of pain and suffering. So I'll digress there.
All right. Well, we're out of time, but thank you so much for coming on. It was a great segment. Rachel, thank you for gracing us with so many wonderful answers from a woman's perspective. And Emilio, of course, always a pleasure hearing the man's perspective. You guys are such a nice balance. I thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much
Thank you so much for having us.
Guys, definitely check them out at Relationship Renegades. That was Emilio Palafox and Rachele Brooke Smith. Check her out on her website, rachelbsmith.com. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeart Radio. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Tempus, the next generation of the engagement economy, allowing people to make money on their data and earn cryptocurrency for the time they spend on things they already currently love to do. With Tempus, brands will have the ability to pay you directly for interacting with apps, watching videos, playing games, and more. Tempus, the time is now. Engage and earn.
Welcome back, my beautiful friends. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeart Radio. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Welcome to yet another amazing My Digital World segment brought to us by Tempus Network. Today, we're featuring the incredible Carmelia Ray, celebrity matchmaker, member of the Forbes Council, and head of marketing and PR at Kindly, where they aim to create a socially responsible ecosystem that facilitates effortless, unrandom acts of kindness. Essentially, they're a humanitarian-based cryptocurrency project launched in Web3. Today, we're chatting about bridging the gap between social impact and Web3 and how this new iteration of the internet can allow for innovative consumer and business-related products. But those products are to generate, execute, and track certified, measurable social impact on the blockchain. Now, there's a twist. While the world awakens to the phenomenon of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, widespread awareness is yet to uncover the potential of the underlying technology, a peer-to-peer, decentralized, distributed ledger known as the blockchain. And this revolutionary technology has been heralded by thought leaders of Silicon Valley and PhD mathematicians as the greatest confluence of technology since the invention of the internet itself. More than just a trustless means of securely and instantaneously sending currencies around the world. And when I mean trustless, I'm talking about not requiring the trust of other parties. The blockchain allows a multitude of applications, such as peer-to-peer, smart contracts, the creation of digital assets, and data collection. It may also be the missing piece of the puzzle for the Internet of Things. And one of the biggest benefits for humanity that will be ushered in by the blockchain is the role it will play in helping cut out the middleman or intermediary organizations that have traditionally funneled money away from the average individual and put it into the hands of the already wealthy. By now, we've already heard of NFTs, cryptocurrency, blockchain, metaverse, DAOs, and Web 3.0. But how all these future forward technologies leveraged to innovate social impact investment and equitable community engagement, that is the question. How do you leverage that? And here to chat some more is the amazing Carmelia Ray. Welcome to the show, stunner.
Hi. Oh my God. I'm always glad to share space with you. And I'm really, really excited about the Kindly Coin and the Kindly Project. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, let's get right to it. So I love your article that you just authored. It was great. And you claim that according to current business landscape, more companies are looking to showcase their social impact projects to attract the right talent. And there are several ways to do this. And one of the most effective ways you say is through storytelling. Please explain.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the Kindly Project was first founded from an idea that one of the co-founders, Paul Rodley Turner, who runs a Food for Life Global. And, you know, he has such an amazing story himself, having been, 30 plus years now dedicated to, charity and giving and in the humanitarian space. So people will definitely tend to, be more aligned and more loyal to brands when there is an inspiring story or something that separates them from other companies. They actually say that 71% of consumers today will even switch brands if they feel that, the company is more focused on their corporate social responsibility versus another, whether it is choosing to go green or, every purchase goes towards, feeding children or providing a shelter for the homeless. I think it's just kindness is so sought and rare. News is inundating with horrible stories, so we all want to hear a great story, and I can't think of a better initiative than spreading kindness, especially now in Web3.
Exactly. And when it comes to social impact in Web3, Carmelia, you said it, the most obvious examples are projects that encourage giving. And when you talk about giving, you could talk about crypto giving or organize around a certain charitable cause. But sometimes the less obvious use cases can be just as impactful. And this is certainly the case when it comes to blockchain and Web3. So there's nothing too small when it comes to charity. Now, you believe that increasing customer loyalty and engagement through social impact is essential to building a sustainable business, and that by aligning your brand with a cause that matters to your customers, you create a deeper connection, leading to increased customer loyalty. How would a brand go about this?
One of the reasons we built, or we're in the process of developing this ecosystem, a brand can partner with our project, and also they can partner with other charities. If they partner with a charity and make that apparent to their customers, knowing that, hey, and it has to make sense, right? There has to be some relevancy to, I believe the more relevancy there is in that partnership with the brand, or with creating their NPO, or eventually having an official charity, consumers will be more likely to repurchase those products. When you think about products now that are vegan, or makeup lines that are vegan, or I guess production that states no animal cruelty or no animal testing, that's something that people can stand behind. So you can do that by looking for charities that are already already acting and functioning, that you can support, that you can partner with, and then share that message with your consumers.
Yeah, and it's important to note we're talking about charities that are active living in
Yes.
Web 3.0. Web 1 and 2 is a thing of the past. It's not the most verifiable place to donate, and it's not that ecosystem that we're talking about. This is power back to the people, and inherent in the Web3 space is the value of decentralization. And by helping take power away from the center and redistributing it to the periphery, blockchain will usher in greater equity and inclusion for traditional underserved populations, Carmelia. And whether we hear of new tech models and ideas, we think about how it can be used to do good, and the blockchain can definitely be applied to generate social impact. Kindly is very much aware of this. How are you approaching donations and charity on the blockchain?
Well, we really want to become the primary source for what we consider measurable social impact. Traditionally, when you write a check to a charity, I've written thousands and thousands of dollars to sick kids. No offense to sick kids, but when I write that check for whatever amount, there is actually, I don't really know where those funds are being allocated. I'm not really seeing the true impact of my dollar and where it's going to. Where on the blockchain, everything is trackable. When you're thinking about charities and they've got a measurable impact, for example, it costs 10 cents to feed a child, or $100 to plant a tree. I'm making up these numbers, right? But when you know that, and you can follow that chain and actually see the work, especially for people who go to these countries, they see the impact that's happening. This is what Kindly will do. It will actually, you on the blockchain, it's all trackable down to the source, and the ecosystem that we're building wants to follow it down to the location, down to the child, down to
the nitty gritty,
Absolutely.
And interesting, you're so right. Direct access to funding for charities is key. Instantaneous transfer of currencies across borders to charitable organizations and emergency support will allow faster, more targeted response rates. Lower cost in transferring funds internationally could mean an overall increase in the funds sent to charities, to your point. And due to the very highly divisible nature of cryptocurrencies, micro donations, Carmelia, now become much more feasible. Charities could also creatively pair this with smart contracts for their donors, such as every time you purchase, say, 0.00001 of a Bitcoin is transferred to your charity of choice, right? So I definitely see the revolution taking place here on the blockchain. Now let's talk Martin Seligman. You mentioned him in your article, a psychology professor at the University of Pennsylvania. He
Yes.
conducted extensive research for over 15 years on happiness and well-being, and his model for positive psychological features is PERMA.
Yes.
Employee retention and satisfaction increases through adopting PERMA in the workplace. workplace. Please explain PERMA. We have about 3 minutes.
Okay, PERMA. Okay, so I'll fast track through it. So the acronym is number one, positive emotions such as joy or gratitude. That's what you feel when you give to charity. Engagement in activities that give you pleasure. So whether it's organizing your entire team to go to that rescue relief, to go feed that animal as a community. Relationships with people that you care about. You care about your friends, you care about your coworkers, you care about people in your inner circle. Meaningful work. If you have this mundane job, but yet you know this job, a portion of your paycheck or this company is being socially responsible, you feel more joy, you feel more inclined to go to work because you know in some way you're impacting the environment and your children's future. And finally, accomplishment and feeling proud of the tasks that you've achieved. I can't think of a better reward, me being a matchmaker and helping people find love, and now partnering with Kindly to be able to create this ecosystem of measurable impact where people feel good and they're transparent and knowing that they can track that impact and feel a sense of responsibility both corporately and personally.
I love it. I love it. And to your point, employee retention and satisfaction increases through corporate acts of kindness, and having attitude of gratitude, so to speak, always fosters positivity and is something that most people can get behind in the workplace. So I think that's a win-win for all. All right, we have 2 minutes left. You answered that amazingly. What is the biggest mistake brands are currently making, Carmelia?
I think brands are if they are not creating programs or initiatives to foster this social impact, to generate, to be corporately responsible, to look at the environment, to look at their processes. How can they be more efficient? How can they, give back more to their employees, and outside of their employees have real impact on this opportunity for giving? I think that's a big mistake. And then, of course, the storytelling. What are the wins? How are your dollars impacting those families? Give us those stories. Tell us how you've changed a person's life. I think when companies do not get with their people and it's all about just the messaging and the logos, I personally like to work with companies that have transparent team members. I want to know who's behind it. Who are the founders? What do they do when they're not at work? And this is why, you see Tesla has X number of followers, yet Elon Musk has hundreds of millions, because people want to follow the founders. They want to follow the humans that are running these companies.
Oh, I love it. Listen, we're out of time, but I just wanted to thank you for coming on. Always amazing, so inspiring, and you're always doing such incredible stuff. I love chatting with you.
Thank you so much.
Guys, you definitely have to check out Carmelia Ray. Head to her website, carmeliaray.com. Kindly, definitely check out what they're doing. Head to Kindly and make sure that you are also donating and thoughtfully donating, not just donating to anybody. While Web3 is still in its infancy, it will be a while before the use cases we spoke about are fully implemented at scale. That being said, to some extent, all of the use cases are already happening in practice, and whether through pilot projects, emerging DAOs, or up-and-coming collectives, it will take time for the kinks to be worked out and for these ideas to catch on. But when they do, the end result will be a fairer, more equitable economy and world. This is the connection between social impact and cutting out the middleman. That was My Digital World, brought to us by Tempus Network. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeart Radio. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Animoca Brands. As a worldwide industry leader in digital, entertainment, blockchain, gamifications, and digital property rights, Animoca Brands plays a key role in the future growth of the metaverse. Ranked by the Financial Times as a high-growth company, Animoca Brands creates a new asset class, GameFi economies, and a more equitable digital framework contributing to the building of the open metaverse. For more information and to become part of the excitement, go to animocabrands.com. That's animocabrands.com.
Welcome back, my beautiful friends. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeart Radio. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Today, in one of our newest segments brought to us by Animoca Brands called Hello Open Metaverse, we are featuring the awesome Mohamed Ezeldin. Now, Mohamed heads up the Tokenomics team at Animoca Brands. And Animoca is a leader in digital entertainment, blockchain, and gamification. And they're working to advance digital property rights and contribute to the establishment of the open metaverse. Mo leads a global team that has driven dozens of projects for Animoca. He and his team's unique skill sets are driving decentralization through tokenomics and building a sustainable token economy. Today, we're chatting about what does a head of tokenomics do, how to make a game sustainable, and how Animoca is shifting their approach to find the balance in gaming and GameFi. Now, the evolving Web3 buildout is moving forward viciously, funded by billions of venture dollars. Web3 has potential applications across multiple industries and is attempting to solve ownership issues surrounding privacy, self-sovereignty, and economics within the internet. Now, by leveraging tokens, cryptography, and decentralized technology, Web3 will eventually disrupt the centralized, intermediary, monopolistic business structures. Now, fundamental tenant of the Web 3.0 ecosystem is sharing ownership via tokens and tokenomics with users for adding value. Now, tokens are transformative features in the Web3 business models. They represent programmable assets on the blockchain that grant owners ownership, incentives, and participation in the growth and governance of Web 3.0 platforms. And here to chat some more is my expert at hand, Mo Ezeldine. Welcome to the show, superstar.
Woo, good to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for coming on. Mo, you're a mathematician by training, and your passion is building tomorrow's economies through tokenization. How did you go from teaching to tokenomics, and what exactly does a head of tokenomics do?
Oh, there's a lot to unpack in there. So yeah, as you mentioned, I was a high school teacher, a maths high school teacher in a previous life for 10 years. And funnily enough, that's what leveled me up and gave me a lot of the skill sets necessary alongside my mathematics background. I guess what does a head of tokenomics do? Very good question. It's an ever-evolving role, as we're in an ever-evolving space. A lot of my focus is on, as you alluded to, designing sustainable economies. But what does that actually mean? Like, what is tokenomics? Probably a good place to start. Super high level, it's the monetary policy or the fiscal policy within an ecosystem that's tokenized. Now, that's high-level fluff, even though I've just given that definition, because a lot of these ecosystems, as of now, are just games, for example, or social products. And the beauty of tokenomics is we get to build alongside the community to be able to, and to reference some of the words you're using, to give ownership to people within an ecosystem over their assets, be it over their data, over in-game assets, over NFTs, over tokens, regardless of what that is. So it's designing what that looks like, case specific, from ecosystem to ecosystem or project to project.
Yeah, that's a big shift from teaching. But I understand the underlying concept of, for you, things were all about mathematics, and applying the mathematics to the bigger picture. And what you're doing today for Animoca is exactly that, which I'll shift to metaverse. So as we all know it on our platform, people love the show because of edutainment. So metaverse, guys, of course, I'm going to reiterate this, a 3D immersive internet is revolutionizing and disrupting so many industries across the board: entertainment, social media, e-commerce, games, esports, private digital spaces, virtual real estate, education, healthcare, medicine, manufacturing. I could go on and on, but you guys get the picture. Now, in gaming, though, established Web 2 players such as Meta, Unity, Roblox, Epic Games, Microsoft, and many others are rushing to stake their metaverse claims. But Animoca, Mo, is already there. And speaking to the mass game developers who are not and still stuck in that Web 2 portal, they're creating what we've come to see are these walled gardens, with each walled metaverse having its proprietary privileges, avatars, features, and currency. And digital products purchased within each Web 2 walled metaverse are not transportable and constrained to their platform of origin. How does Web 3.0 solve the interoperability issue, and how do you crack the code, and how did you crack the code at Animoca?
I think a lot of it is in the power of the tooling. So within Web 2 ecosystems, for example, if I have a skin in Fortnite, I'm constrained to that ecosystem. I can't take it out. It's stuck. But leveraging blockchain technology, and especially in the last couple of years with NFTs or non-fungible tokens, they allow us to then take out who we are or any assets we own from one ecosystem and be representative in other ecosystems, without having to, without having to be stuck, having the freedom of choice, having the freedom to be able to move from one to another. Obviously, we're still quite early on with the technology, so it's now building bridges between each of these different chains that are hosting these tokens and NFTs, so they're able to communicate and we can have a high level of interoperability.
Yeah, it's all about interoperability, and of course, incorporating blockchain technology. That all matters. Now, Web3 is going to allow participants to tangibly own the Web3 assets held in custodial wallets in the form of non-fungible tokens or fungible tokens, right? Hence, enabling users to move purchased or created digital objects and content across different platforms, like you just said. Now, Web3 companies such as Decentraland, Sandbox, Land Vault, Gala Games, Star Atlas, Axie Infinity, those staples, there's a lot of innovation there. What innovative products is Animoca developing for the burgeoning metaverse in response to where we're all headed?
Where do I start? So I guess fundamentally, we believe in the open metaverse. So it's not necessarily one product that we believe in. We believe in a multitude of products and how we can interact within one platform to another one. Some of the titles that we're super bullish on in terms of gaming. So we have a AAA game. One of the first AAA blockchain games is Phantom Galaxies. So we've innovated there where it's an MMO style game where you own land, but what's super interesting within the planets in this instance is the planets actually emit the tokens based on gameplay. So in pre-existing token economies, it's for doing basic actions, you just earn tokens, and then it's not sustainable because there isn't enough buy pressure on those tokens. Just people, they play, they earn, and they sell. But fundamentally, when we come to playing games, it's never about the earning. It's only that top 1 or 2% who earn in gaming. But realistically, the majority of us play for fun. So it's introducing the fun element back into gaming, because that's the core reason why we game to begin with, and then leveraging what we can from a technological point of view to enable ownership and to enable transfer of assets between people, or an open marketplace for people to interact. Another game or I guess another metaverse, Sandbox, as you've mentioned. So Sandbox has been a big hit, but we're only just starting to see the power of Sandbox. I think we're on season 4 now, I want to say. So season 3, season 4. So it's about growing alongside the community, whereas in pre-existing Web2 games, we build in silence for 3 or 4 years and then we release. Whereas now it's building alongside our community and taking their input into account, because fundamentally you want the community members or end users from a Web2 perspective to be spending their time within your game ecosystem or within your metaverse.
Building communities, it's all about that. And it's going to actually take me to the next question, because the GameFi trilemma, Mo, is made up of 3 components, as you know it: playability, profitability, and accessibility. And the problem arises from the fact that you can only have 2 components at any given time. And Web2 games give up profitability for players. Most Web3 games have given up accessibility by charging a hefty price for NFTs, which are required to earn the in-game play to earn rewards, or required MetaMask to access the game. And others have given up playability to chase after the hot money by porting Web2 games without considering the suitability of the token model and or even revamping the game economy. So what is the solution, and how is Animoca shifting their approach in gaming and GameFi and finding that balance?
Absolutely right in everything you've said. I think that the main 2 solutions is, number 1 is understanding why gamers come into a game ecosystem. It's for the fun element. So it has to be around the playability first. And then as players come in, bearing in mind that the majority of players that as an untapped market within Web3 is your Web2 gamers. So it's making sure that we're abstracting all of the blockchain, all of the profitability, so to speak, in the back end. We don't want gamers to come for that yet. We want them to come for the main gameplay, the value proposition of that ecosystem that they're entering. And then once they're in, discover the power of blockchain and discover the power of Web3. So it's more, we talk about product roadmaps, but we also need to talk about roadmaps to decentralization. And that's converting Web 2 players into Web 3 players via initially coming off for the gameplay aspect, and then we transition alongside. So it's not the case of which 3 are we solving at the same time, because we can't. It's which 2 are we solving and optimizing, and then what's the next combination, and moving it through a timeline.
It's interesting because it all comes down to math. It comes down to patterns. It comes down to math. You see this. You see it from the inside because you're behind the scenes developing this for the world, for fun, for entertainment, for escapism. But the calculations in the way that you are building and the tokenization of it all are so precise that it's interesting to see it play out. And I have interviewed so many of the top companies, that the subsidiaries that Animoca has within, and everybody has their own brilliancy. I have to say, you're all brilliant.
Yeah, I'm lucky to work in the position that I have, and alongside some of my colleagues. I think what's super interesting is we're still very early in the space. A lot of the tooling is quite early, so mistakes will naturally be made. It's just making sure that we learn. And with that said, it's being dynamic. So a lot of the subsidiaries, I know you've spoken with Bajena from Gamey and Benjamin from Darewise. 2 amazing platforms, opposite end of the gaming spectrum. So with Gamey and Bajena, with Arcade, it's more hyper casual. Yeah, with Darewise, the Life Beyond game is more a AAA metaverse experience, MMO experience, which is super amazing. And the idea is game players don't fall under one personality or one persona. We have multiple different personas. So it's which game players want to enter which ecosystem, and then how can they benefit from being within that ecosystem? And within that as well, how can the game benefit? And how can we move all of these different gamers from one ecosystem into another ecosystem? Not because of any
continue the community and continue, because I think what's also important to understand is that the trilemma components share a correlation with one another. For example, a game studio or project team could be generating revenue from the sale of NFTs, so profitability, which derives their value from the inherent utility in the game, which means these NFTs must provide the owners an edge in the game. And as a result, this deters the free-to-play gamers from trying to game, which is accessibility, and dampens non-pay-to-win players' gaming experience, which is playability. So it's this like big circle that now you have been able to break that pattern and shift them into a different interoperability back into a different ecosystem that now they can be part of that ownership and have a say-so. So I think it's phenomenal.
Absolutely. I mean, it's ongoing. It's ongoing. We have to be dynamic. We also have to innovate at the same time, as well as reflect on what the market has told us and what we've learned from other projects. Yeah, I think it's an amazing space. And what's even more exciting is some of the things we're working on now will have some new, or what we're hoping will become industry standards moving forward. So we can enter into a more sustainable ecosystem where a lot of projects have failed has been due to short-term. They're after short-term gains, where it's let's sell an NFT, let's get a hyped community. But you spoke about NFTs having utility. For a lot of these games, especially the AA, AAA games, it takes time to build. So it's great that some of these game studios, not necessarily within our ecosystem, but in general, in the bull market, had raised millions and millions of pounds. And then it was like, all right, excellent. We have a community. We have an NFT. Let's build a game. And then just discovering how difficult it is to actually build a game that people want to play.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're out of time, but I wanted to say thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure chatting with you. You are great at what you do. Animoca is amazing. One of my favorite companies out there. Great, solid company. And I thank you for coming on and sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you for having me on. It's been amazing.
Thank you. Guys, that was Mo Ezeldine, head of tokenomics at Animoca Brands. You have to understand that Web3 is evolving towards a much more immersive and valuable internet for everyone involved. Venture funds have invested $33 billion in Web3 projects in 2021, and they're on pace to nearly double that this year alone. Many predict that the broader Web3 sector will become a multi-trillion dollar industry over the next decade, going from just a buzzword to mainstream, but to really disrupting existing businesses, also at the same time creating massive new markets and giving rise to the creator economy. It's all about data sovereignty for the original producer and the extreme need to disrupt technocracy. That was our Hello Open Metaverse segment by Animoca Brands, and that was the awesome Mohammed Ezeldin, Animoca's head of tokenomics. Head to animocabrands.com to get involved in all the action and fun. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeart Radio. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Caldwell Soames Incorporated, investing globally in transformative businesses like Original Digital Corporation, or ODC. ODC develops advanced consumer and commercial fintech solutions such as OG Pay, which will transform the way you manage your money. From sending and receiving money globally for free, paying for goods and services in person and online, pay bills, buy and sell digital currencies, all while earning interest. OG Pay is easy to set up, FDIC insured, and your information is secured. Check out ogpay.com.
Welcome back, my beautiful friends. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeart Radio. I am your host, Zen Sams. Up in just a few minutes in our Innovation and Tech segment brought to us by Caldwell Soames, we have our returning contributor, Paul Caldwell, and his good friend, Dan Reichman, CTO of Original Digital Corporation. Today, we're discussing whether there is a paradox between bank tech and DeFi. And the bigger question is, can we integrate both systems into our digital world and propel bank tech into Web 3.0 successfully? Now, the growing dominance of centralized entities over the internet and users' personal data has resulted in the need for the internet's decentralization. And although the concept of a Web 3 has been around for almost a decade, it's now that people have started to realize the importance of a decentralized web ecosystem. Now, Web 3 stands to resolve issues associated with today's dominantly centralized web. And over the past few decades, payment processing giants like MasterCard and Visa have actively explored Web3 opportunities. In fact, both companies announced partnerships with cryptocurrency wallets and exchanges, setting precedents and signaling a green light for industry enthusiasts. The Q4 2021 quarter saw $2.5 billion in payments made with crypto-connected Visa cards. Even in its current developmental stage, Web3, by virtue of decentralization, ensures that payments are safer, simpler, and smarter. Payments are peer-to-peer, borderless, and support multiple tokens and blockchains. Now, to set it all straight, you need to know about something called ISO 20022, an open global standard for financial information. It creates a common language for payments worldwide. And companies like Original Digital get this. They've built a platform over the past 5 years already designed to overlay these rapidly integrating standardized messaging formats. ODC's OG Pay platform, for one, is already fully integrated with Nacha and already provides ACH services. Now, Nacha manages the development, administration, and governance of the ACH network, which is the backbone for the electronic movement of money and data in the United States. Essentially, they're an association for the payments industry. And here to chat some more are my experts at hand. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Hello, Zen.
Hi, Zen.
Paul, nice to have you back. All right, Paul, what does all of this mean to the consumer or the business wanting to make seamless payments globally? Should they be considering more of a centralized solution with a traditional bank or more of a DeFi solution on a blockchain using a Web3 type solution? Or is it both? Please explain.
Zen, it's both. I mean, at the end of it all, it's really about service, and it's really about the businesses and consumers getting their needs met. So when it comes down to the simple, that simple value, it's really both. And what you find with ISO 20022 is that you'll see an integration, more of an integration of the central bank transfer facilities. You're going to see this singular messaging platform between these. So everything's domestic, everything's local when it comes to banking, when it comes to moving money, or when it comes to payments. The reason the big fintech or the big companies in for example, merchant services like a Fiserv, for example, don't seem to be very concerned about a crypto MasterCard kind of payments firm is they realize that all of the DeFi or the fintech solutions that are out there only oriented towards DeFi are actually claiming to disrupt the very businesses that they rely on to be in business. And so it is a bit of a paradox from that perspective. But at the end of it, it's really both, because the standards around the world are improving as well. The FedNow that exists right now, instant ACH, which exists right now. But what doesn't exist right now is real-time ACH, as we call it. And that comes on board middle of the year next year. And as you mentioned, the OG Pay platform that Dan and his team oversee at ODC have that already considered, because these messaging platforms and these technologies need these overlays. So the companies that are going to create the overlays to use all of that technology, integrating that on the back end with things like blockchain and crypto and real-time settlements, are going to be the ones in our bet that win the day going forward.
Yeah, and globally, Paul, it's very true, because there's an increase in the diversity of consumer payment preferences going way beyond credit cards. Digital mobile wallets are rising really in popularity among consumers, and in second and third tier markets, really, if you look, they're looking to really overtake the e-com payments market share, and more mature consumer markets around the world are starting to really integrate new ideas with longstanding traditional norms. And this trend is truly rapidly flowing into the payment space. We're seeing it now in real time. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Zen.
So Dan, super apps, Paul and I were talking about this. They house this variety of digital services, from social interactions and shopping to delivery, ride hailing and payments with a single app, right? So Dan, if this payments phenomena of dispelling the paradox between centralized and decentralized and having it all integrated, is this the reason the OG Pay app is a sort of super app with account holders in so many countries?
Yeah, I mean, we're basically providing all the services that you already mentioned and packaging the payments, and as you said, payments for services, payments for goods, in addition to holding and buying cryptocurrencies or maybe making money transfers. So it's really a super app. As you said, it's a banking services and payment services all rolled into one app.
And Paul, interestingly enough, because as people, Paul and I talk about this all the time, Dan, but as people live more of their lives online, the demand for instant gratification and convenience skyrockets, and they want a full array of financial services available on their phone and instant transactions 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, hence the rise of fintech and digital first companies and blockchain technology. Paul, where do blockchain cryptocurrencies and nationalized currency tokens show up in all of this, with more and more retailers accepting cryptocurrencies globally?
That's a great question, Zen. I think a lot of people make a mistake on these things because they look at them separately. I like to keep in my own mind separately. I know it all ultimately culminates at the apex of fintech, but I like to separate bank tech, because there's a lot more going on in banking technology than most people or the media covers or most people would care about. But there is a lot going on there. And I think that when you realize that, it's important to look at the highest best use of each of these things, like cryptocurrencies. You see these nationalized currency tokens coming on board from countries actually issuing their own tokens. And I think we're going to see more and more of that show up as the governments nationalize these kinds of things and try to create a federated environment around but with distributed data. So it's like a federated platforms developing, like we just talked about with the new ISO standard, with distributed data, distributed payments, distributed money that moves digitally. And as we know, cryptocurrencies today, for example, that's one aspect of it. And we see more and more retailers are starting to accept cryptocurrencies. And that's been a very long time adoption. It's not just popping up now. It's been a conversation for years and years. And I think it's going to be a conversation for years to come as standardization becomes more the play. And through standardization, you can then get an environment that also is more secure. Consumer protection is a very important aspect here. And protected payments from business to business as well, with the security and all of that surety that needs to be built into those payments. So I think people just make that mistake, and it's important to look for the higher value proposition from each one, because that will help them come together at the places where value gets created.
Yeah, very true. And the lack of bureaucracy makes Web3 payments much quicker, so to speak. While traditional Web2 payments might take days to settle, payments on the blockchain are settled within minutes or even seconds. And international transfers are also much easier under a Web3 payment system, removing that need for complex currency conversions and expensive, remittance fees. So just as in the OG Pay has something very unique in the sense where it combines and merges both worlds very, very nicely. But in the sense, Web3 payments are a form of DeFi. They secure ledgers to process the moving of money and seek to combat the control of large financial institutions such as banks, which often require fees and the submitting of data in exchange for their services. So traditional e-com, points of sale, and real-time payment methods are rapidly blending at this point. Dan, how does the OG Pay app support both consumers and merchants in both Web 2 and 3 simultaneously?
Well, I mean, we have essentially gateways to all traditional banking services. At the same time, we have gateways to the crypto world, right? So you can buy Bitcoin and fund it with your credit card, and then you can use that Bitcoin and use OG Pay to pay for goods and services as well. So we kind of go both ways.
In real time.
In real time, correct.
Yeah. So, Paul, in the meantime, growing numbers of dissatisfied crypto consumers are likely to try their luck filing chargebacks against exchanges with their credit card issuer. We've talked about this in the past. Hitting the exchanges undermines the infrastructure on which Web3 is being built. Should we expect professional chargeback mitigation to play an important role as the crypto market deepens and Web 3.0 becomes a reality?
Yes, I think so. I think that has to happen. I mean, if someone buys a pair of tennis shoes at a sporting goods shop on a Friday and they don't like them and they bought them with their cryptocurrency card, MasterCard or Visa card, for example, and then they want to return them on Monday, but the token that they use, the cryptocurrency, the coin that they use, Bitcoin, let's say, has a move up or down, and then they return this product. Well, the consumer needs to get their money back. The merchant needs to get their money back. And they need to provide the money back, and then they need to get it back. So from the manufacturer, or they have to restock it. There is a ton of technology that's built in there for return merchandise authorizing and things like that. So there's a bunch that has to get talked about at that retail level. And I think consumers too are episodic in their thinking. That when they see in the media, Bitcoin's down this much or Ethereum's down that much, that's for coin trading. That's almost like the FX trader, right? That's almost like a currency trader mentality. What we're talking about here is real commerce globally in real time. It's why what Dan and his team have put together with OG Pay is so impressive, is that you can literally keep your tokens, keep your coins, and then they have this liquidity provisioning technology that they invented that allows for you to then just go instantly sell some of your tokens, get complete transaction history verification, instant settlement onto your card, and go buy those same tennis shoes with your Visa card. But it wasn't a crypto transaction. It was a currency-based transaction, still instant. Still in real time.
In real time.
That's the magic of these new super app technologies that you're going to see, I think, coming more and more to the forefront. OG Pay, Dan and his team, they've just been working with OG Pay, building it out for like 4 years, so they're ahead of the curve.
Yeah. Okay. We have about a minute and a half left. Dan, preference diversity is the name of the game going forward. Onboarding funds and cash out features are key to overall success for any consumer mobile wallet solution. Why are these wallets on the rise? Why do you think?
Well, especially in the third world countries where banking services are not as easily accessible, that I think what makes the super app type of services are very attractive. Also, access to currencies that are not necessarily, or medium, if you will, not necessarily subject to the same inflation you would see in the third world countries also makes it very attractive. So the combination of instant service, ability to kind of control your savings, right? And moving money in and out makes it very, very interesting, I think, for everyone.
Oh, yeah, especially for the 1.7 billion people in this world that are unbanked and or underbanked. This is really solving real world issues and really paving the way out of poverty in some respects. But we are out of time. I want to just thank both of you for coming on and sharing light on fintech and banking and really where we're headed in Web 3.0. Paul, thank you so much. Dan, it was a pleasure.
Thank you, Zen.
My pleasure, Zen.
Web 3.0 is supposed to take control of the internet from big tech. The key is that you become the owner of your data and not let the data aggregators gain control of it and the social media giants. That's what crypto enthusiasts are calling self-sovereign identity. That was our innovation and tech segment brought to us by Caldwell Soames. That was Dan Rieckman, CTO of Original Digital Corporation, and Paul Caldwell, Chairman and CEO of Caldwell Soames. Head to ogpay.com and definitely check out odc.inc. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeart Radio. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Revere Securities. Revere is committed to building a relationship of trust in which they work closely with you to help you define your objectives, explore alternatives, and choose the financial and investment strategies that are most appropriate for you. Go to reveresecurities.com.
Well, that's a wrap, my dear friends. We are at the end of our date. Remember to join me right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeart Radio, every Saturday night from 9 to 10 p.m. Or you could head to 710WOR.iHeart.com/A Moment of Zen. Also, remember that we're now live on Travers TV Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern and on YouTube Sundays at 2 p.m. Eastern. All of our episodes are available on our YouTube channel. Remember to check us out on YouTube. Remember to check us out on social media. Remember to tune back in next Saturday night right here, same time, same place. Thank you for listening to A Moment of Zen. It's been an absolute pleasure being your host. Thanks again to all of our sponsors that continue to make this happen. And remember, happiness is the only thing that multiplies when you share it.